My name is Art. I'm part of the Foster writing community, but most importantly, we're joined by Will Steiner today. He is the founder and CEO of Big Later, which is the internet's most entertaining crash course on personal finance. Will, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I wanted to start off with one of my favorite things that I've seen on LinkedIn this year, and it was like a post of yours. So, can you please explain to the rest of us why someone Venmoed you $10 so that you can buy yourself a burrito?
Yeah. Okay. I have to jog my own memory real quick. This is like a win for customer support.
Yeah,
And
exactly. The customer service burrito.
the title CEO of Big Later just means I'm the only person working full time on this. There's a team of 5 other people. They're all part time, but it's I writing the content, doing the support, managing all the ops, all the stuff that comes with that responsibility. So we had a customer go through the content. I think she had a little bit of a hiccup at some point with the email service provider. But as one does when they care about their customer experience, definitely made sure she got through that no problem. And afterwards she was like, is there anything I can do? This product experience has been phenomenal. I've learned so much. I feel so much more confident in my understanding of this stuff that's sort of that matters, money management, the different account types, simple starting strategies. And she was like, can I Venmo you for a coffee or a burrito? And it's I'm not going to say no to that. And so she Venmoed me. I went and got the burrito, posted a photo. We all lived happily ever after.
Super cool. Love that. And so just for the 20,000 feet picture, what is Big Later, and how did you end up creating it?
Yeah. So Big Later is a mashup of three things. It's an email-based learning experience covering personal finance, investing, equity compensation, crypto, sort of the world of hey, what do I do with my money? And a lot of humor baked in, which is a total vacuum in most financial content, right? It's jargon laden. It's written for not regular human beings who read and want to enjoy the content that they're reading and need narrative, need metaphor, need humor. And we add all that. We augment this with a writing style that is for a regular person to enjoy.
Interesting. So from my understanding is it started out as a side project while you were still at Salesforce. So how long did it take you from inception to actually doing it full time?
Yeah. So early 2019, I guess we could go back even further. In 2015, I moved to San Francisco with my girlfriend, fiance now, getting married in 11 days. So that's going to be fun. And everyone was San Francisco's expensive. And we were honestly, if one more person tells me that San Francisco is expensive, I am going to lose it. And then of course, 3-4 years go by and it's yeah, I got 10 grand in credit card debt. And I'm this place is pretty expensive. But fortune would have it that I got a little bit of a financial second chance with a, bonus at work. I was able to pay off my debt and I was I don't want to be doing this again. And so went down the sort of read the entire canon of personal finance and investing literature. Took about 6 months, hundreds of Patrick O'Shaughnessy's Invest Like the Best podcast, a lot of Google search, all that jazz of let's get myself to a place where I actually know what the hell's going on. And then after that, period was over, it's none of my friends are doing this. It wasn't particularly fun for me. And I just thought hey, why don't I bring some people over to my house? We'll drink a few beers. I'll take them through this. I'll get them all set up. We'll get them with their budget. We'll get their Roth IRA opened. And then we'll get them in auto, indexing with, passive indexing. And so that started emerging. And then I was okay, I kind of, this curriculum was almost developing quietly in the background. And next thing I know, I'm hey, maybe I could do this for the interns at Salesforce. And that went really well, got great feedback. Then it was the SDRs and the BDRs. And so did a bunch of these presentations. And at a certain point I was this is fun, but I could productize this. And so just sort of naturally this curriculum had emerged and I was 2019 was sort of when the hustle and morning brew were like really they're really sort of hitting their stride. And I was like, I don't want to write a newsletter because I don't have interest in unlimited, an endless stream of interesting things to say. And so why don't I just create something that's more like a newsletter, but it has a start and a stop, and we'll call it an email-based course. And I'd heard of some other people doing something like this, but we got a couple of folks involved with the project, designer, brand strategists, some marketing ops people, and we put together this thing that had a really unique look and feel, incorporated a lot of the principles that are sort of like really important when it comes to learning experience design. And I got to throw my sort of like, I guess, create my own voice in the process. And so we published this thing to the internet that was like, you sign up, you get an email a day for about a month, and it'll take you through sort of everything you need to know to learn how to start investing. You kind of get this like short form burst on a daily basis, but this longer form month-long transformation. And so that was, back in 2019, the idea started. We were like, October was when sort of the team got together. We were like, let's launch this thing in January. Like, let's work our asses off. We got 3 months. And of course, we didn't launch until August or September of the following year. A lot of learnings along the way there. And then
always, yeah.
Now, we're coming up, I guess next month today will be 2 years since the whole sort of the gang got together to work on this project. And a lot has happened in the last year. Like, we started as a consumer product, but now we've got a lot of really interesting partnership opportunities in the funnel. And we're also going B2B as like a solution for companies to package up their compensation and their benefits package with financial literacy to hopefully, improve retention rates of their younger employees.
Super cool. So one of the things that's super interesting is you're kind of swimming a little bit against the grain. If you look at the, let's say, online education bubble, where it seems like cohort-based courses are the solution to everything, or let's say pre-recorded video courses, but you guys started with text as a delivery vehicle for the educational content. Was there any particular reason why?
Video is like expensive and hard to do really, really well. Editing, if you ever want to change anything, that's a laborious process. And like for anyone who's ran a cohort-based course, it's like, that is a ton of work. Yep. And so we were just like, can we kind of ship something, an MVP that like, it's got a unique voice, it's flexible, it delivers the message, it's aligned with this like relationship that people now have, or this like sort of new relationship that people have with email, but doesn't require as much like hands-on activity after launching as maybe a cohort-based course. So that was the line that we were trying to ride. Like, originally when we were doing this, we were like, we're just going to create this, we're going to put it on the internet, it can run on its own, and we're going to move on with our lives. And of course, that didn't happen.
Because you mentioned that video is a lot of work and that cohort-based courses are also a lot of effort. I picked out one quote of yours where it said that you would like your tombstone to read, "He opened 1 million tabs so that they could enjoy one email." So what do you mean by that?
Okay, email-based courses are also a ton of work. As you know, going down the email-based course path yourself, but it's mostly upfront. Like, whereas CBC has all the facilitation, ongoing meetings, the constant sort of like marketing, a filling of new, the new seats, the launching of new cohorts, the management of the community. An email-based course, like, yeah, it's a big lift up front, and you'll write probably in the neighborhood of 15 to 25,000 words. There's editing, there's building of the automations, there's branding. But then it's like, okay, that bit of the work is done, and you can focus on the marketing. You can focus on these little opportunities to create like little moments of surprise and delight in your customer's experience. So yeah, I'm not saying it's not a lot of work. It's a ton of work, but the shape of it is a little bit different.
Got it. And so you've done now at least you created at least 2 email-based courses for yourself, which one is Big Later, the other one is email-based course. And you've also done consulting for a bunch of other online educators. And it seems like in all of those instances, there's at least some sort of body of work there, whether it is workshops or existing scripts, or let's say a CBC curriculum that then was turned into an email-based course. So have you seen any other instances where someone would start with a clean slate and come up with the curriculum completely on their own?
Even Big Later started with like a slightly different format. These sort of presentations presented to the interns and the young salespeople. But, arguably you're working through something like this with Remote Fabric. It's not super common. It's like, I think it's not like the form that necessarily matters of like, what am I going to take and turn into an EBC? It's like, do I have a sufficiently like informed perspective on topics X, Y, and Z that I'm ready to like communicate in this way? And is this something that my customers want? EBCs are fantastic, like top of the funnel assets, because it gives the customer like a low risk entry point to the student teacher relationship. And they're kind of like set it and forget it once they've been built. So like, would I recommend someone just being like, hey, you're at the very beginning of your creator journey, you have no sort of real assets already, go create an email-based course? I'm not going to 100% rule it out, because like it's on top of being a great top of funnel asset, it can also serve as like a good sort of proof of concept tool. It's like, are people actually, do they care what you have to say? Are they opening the emails? Are they engaging with the content? It's different from a newsletter in that it's not like the exploration of the author's idea. It's more about the transformation of the student as they go through the process, the learning process. So there's stuff that makes EBCs like inherently different. But like for the most part, if you are a creator, you got a bunch of stuff for a cohort-based course or a workshop, like this is a great way to supplement any existing assets.
For sure, yeah. Since we have a bunch of people at Foster who are focusing on newsletters and paid newsletters, there's this one concept which you teach right at the beginning of the email-based course, which is EBCs are very different from newsletters in that they are the product itself. So can you dive in a little bit deeper on that idea?
Sure. And I guess just for context, like what Art's talking about when he says the email-based course, like I codified everything that I learned in the 2 years of building Big Later into like a very sort of meta learning experience so that anyone could go on and create their own version of Big Later. And just so that like, there's no confusion, like you can make a real simple email sequence, right? That has, it's 5 emails and it's 5 upsells to some bigger product that you have. Or you can create this like enjoyable standalone learning experience that has student autonomy built into it. It's like I said, it's got all these opportunities for surprise and delight. It's more about the student transformation, and going that route, I think leads to, higher, more qualified customers or prospective customers and higher conversion as well, because you have given them something. I think this is kind of like, common knowledge now in the sort of like the creator economy. It's like, give away a lot of your best stuff for free and keep some of it for the folks who have intent on going that sort of like extra level deeper. But yeah, so a newsletter is a process that the author of the newsletter sort of seeks to optimize over the lifetime of the effort. An EBC is, you're not optimizing a process, you get to optimize a product. And since folks will sort of like come in and then exit, maybe they'll graduate to some other thing. It's like you get to spend all your time like focusing on how to make this package, discrete, start, stop experience as valuable as it could possibly be. And it's challenging, but it's like we've, I think, along the way figured out a lot of little things that you can do to make that experience really enjoyable. For sure.
Yeah, it's also interesting that obviously newsletters and EBCs can coexist in parallel. So if I just talk about myself, I don't have a massive audience, but I write a weekly newsletter where I just expand on ideas that I was tinkering on. And it's almost like a process of refining those ideas. And through, let's say, email replies from my newsletter readers, I improve on that idea. But then this particular idea, which I created through the newsletter, can be packaged up into an email-based course. And then the email that speaks about this particular idea can then be refined over and over again. And since it's automated, so kind of like with a system like yours, where you use MailerLite or ConvertKit, like once someone signs up, there's no additional effort from your end unless you want to go the extra mile and then do additional customer service or customer delight.
Right. And that's what it kind of comes back to ultimately, is like newsletters are phenomenal. Well, let me just preface this by saying, I think to deliver student transformation, you have to undergo your own sort of like exploratory journey, right? And this is where that whole comment about like, oh, I've opened a million tabs so that someone could read one email. You might be interested in something, but to teach it, you have to go, on every sort of like many offshoots off of this sort of like core idea so that you can talk about something confidently, comprehensively. You're able to tell the story of that thing in a way that is compelling, and not just like compelling, but is like then for the student's transformation. So like your own exploration is a prerequisite to being able to deliver an experience to your students, which could happen in the EBC. That's impactful.
For sure. You mentioned that you and your team, you generated a bunch of learnings along the way. So maybe let's start with high level and then drill into the nitty gritty. So with your own email-based courses and the work you've done for other educators, are there any non-negotiable content pieces or blocks or things that have to be in place so that it's a good or a successful quote unquote email-based course?
So there's two things. One I think is absolutely non-negotiable. The other is like the little sort of more of a cherry on top for the learning experience. The first thing is just taking every opportunity to set expectations with the reader. So for example, like right at the top of our emails, we have the read time. Like, how long is this going to take? Immediately following that, before we get into any of the body content, we're talking about the key takeaways, which gives them sort of like a structure or like a mindset or framework to that they're going to be like, okay, I'm going to go through this and these 3 buckets or these 3 points are going to get hit along the way. So I sort of know what to expect. In our content, in the body copy itself, it's like we're constantly making references or giving little foreshadow into what's coming. And then every email wraps up with a progress tracker, which basically says, hey, this is where you've been, this is where you are today, and this is where you're going, either within the chapter or within the whole course. So it's like, we even do this at the sort of like the structural level, where we'll have an entire email dedicated to sort of like as a chapter overview of like, so hey, let's say there's 4 chapters, the first email in each chapter is going to say like, this is what we're going to cover. This is why it's important. And then within the chapter, in these sort of like deep dive or subtopic emails, we'll go deep, we'll go, more in depth. So like setting expectations is critical for the learning experience to go smoothly. That's sort of like non-negotiable. If you're going to create an email-based course, you've got to set expectations. Mm-hmm. The nice, like the add-on that like took us forever to figure out how to do in MailerLite, because for sort of annoying technical reasons, is the ability to enable self-pacing. So I think a lot of people think about an email-based course. It's like, oh, I'm going to get this email, I'm going to read it, get jazzed about a subject, but I got to wait till tomorrow to get the next one. Ultimately, we figured out a way to make it so that there could be like a little fast forward link at the bottom where it's like, hey, click this email or click this link to get the next email. And that way people could go through at their own pace. And this is one of those things, like when we first launched Big Later, we got a ton of feedback, and it led to us adding all this stuff. It led to us creating a section at the bottom of our emails called recommended further learning, where we would like link to, more sort of intermediate or advanced content, or like throw up like Twitter handles that we loved, book recommendations, articles, that sort of thing. It also yielded the progress tracker. People really wanted to know where they were in the grander scheme of the journey. But the biggest thing that everyone asked for was like, I want to go faster through this. And that's, that's a great sign. It's like the benefit of having a fast forward link in your emails is you also know like, who are the people who are really like cruising through this? Who are my, my 1,000 true fans, right? If you wanted to like pull that concept into this. So creating a fast forward link does 2 things. It enables like student autonomy to set the pace on how they want to proceed through the course, which they could do in a video course. Can't really do in a CBC. There's elements of CBCs that allow you to do this, but it also does one other thing. And it's like, it creates an opportunity for you, the educator or the teacher, whatever you want to call it, like to take advantage of 70 seconds of latency, which is about how long, I mean, some email service providers are faster than others, but it's like, if someone clicks a link and that triggers an automation in your ESP to send the next email, it doesn't send immediately. So you have like 70 seconds. You're like, okay, what am I going to use these 70 seconds for? Am I going to just send them to like a sort of like my blog, and it's like, go read whatever if you want, but you probably won't have enough time to finish something before that next email hits? Or am I going to be like, okay, I've got about 200, 70 seconds, just over a minute. People read about 250 words per minute. So let's say I'm just going to be like, all right, 265 words or whatever. I'm going to use this in between opportunity to sort of like tell another, a deeper part of the story. And so this is what, as you learned, it's like, as you're building your email-based course, you're writing the content, but you also, if you want to do self-pacing, you have all these interstitial pages where you can sort of tell, maybe it's your backstory, or maybe it's the backstory of the company, or maybe it's things that's like the sort of like how I built this approach to being like, I'm going to add depth to this email course experience that enhances the relationship that the student has with the teacher in a way that feels like adjacent to the content, but not 100% related, so that they're not actually like missing any of the learnings.
100%. From a student perspective, I can also attest that that's the killer feature. Like first time when I saw these fast forward links and actually experienced these interstitial pages and got like the behind the scenes content, I was blown away. And I'm sure you received these kind of emails as well. But for me, people who have gone through my sequence so far, I've received most feedback points around the self-pacing, because it seems almost like email sequences are associated with, let's say, drip marketing or drip email campaigns, where you would receive just like some random upsells, as you said, like 5 times, like, hey, here's 10% discount, 15% discount. And on the contrary, it's like a learning experience where you are even in control. So it almost defies the laws of the medium email, from you receive something passively to actually you can trigger something else to be received. So for sure, that's a killer feature.
It was a major win when we figured out how to do that. It took us like 8 hours. So Big Later, just for context, it's like the whole thing is 50 emails if you purchase the add-ons, which is like the advanced content. So like our crash course is, let's say, 30 emails or so, and then we've got 2 additional chapters, soon to be 3 additional chapters worth of content. So it's like, if someone goes through the whole thing, they're with us, for better or worse, hearing my voice in their head for like 2 months, because we skip weekends. And them having the ability to like, I'm going to go forward at the pace that I want to go, is something that, like you said, like a lot of folks really enjoy.
Another thing which I found awesome was that the emails don't read like, let's say, a university script. So it's action packed and it's like full of knowledge, but at the same time, it's highly entertaining. So it reminds me a little bit of reading through a Wait But Why article. And so you said humor is super important and can give you like that extra edge in getting the student to continue reading and retaining the knowledge better. So what helps you to come up with better copy for educational emails?
There's like 2 categories that I can talk about here. There's the structure of an email itself, which is sort of like, and I'm going to run through these really quick, but it's like you start with a hook, and then you set expectations, you define new concepts, you put everything into context, you demonstrate relevance as to why someone would care, you give great examples, you summarize key takeaways, and then you foreshadow to the next thing. And so that's like our formula for like, we want someone to learn, and we also want them to have the sensation of learning. And so that's how we structure the writing. Not perfectly every time, but like that's our formula for crafting educational content with the email format. The other dimension of this is like style and voice. And there's a few things that I always fall back on if it's like, well, I think I put myself in the reader's shoes. It's like, what do I want this experience? What do I want this experience to feel like? I want it to feel like a conversation with someone who, you know, has interesting things to say, is laughing, you know, there's laughter, there's, you know, there's curiosity. And so we do a couple things to create that sensation. One of the easiest ways, like apply this to your writing right now, if you're not, is to use a Q&A format. And that's just basically like, you know, you'll introduce an idea, and then all you have to do is put yourself in the reader's shoes and think, what would they be wondering about what I just said? Write out their question, or at least what you anticipate their question to be, and then answer it. And so it's almost like you're like creating this like a sensation of a conversation with the Q&A format. Metaphor is obviously a phenomenal tool, and metaphor deepens meaning. It's not just a, you know, you're not just making a comparison, you're actually like taking an opportunity to take a concept and add a layer of depth to it. And so metaphors are also a great opportunity to like infuse humor into your writing. Trying to think of what else. I mean, narratives, personal stories, that stuff always sort of like adds character and flavor to concepts, whether, you know, whatever they may be. And the personal touch is like really important as well. So I do a lot of references to like my personal life and be later. And like I do have a sort of like a consistent theme of like jokes that I'll like pop back to. So there's this like thread, and people will be like at the end of it, you know, if I ever like meet with them or chat with them in person or over Zoom or whatever, they're like, I feel like I know you. Like I know you have a sister who's doing a PhD that you're like sort of like vaguely insecure about how much smarter she is than you. You know, there's stuff like that will just be like, okay, yeah, this is very real for me. And I think that makes it feel more real for them as well.
Yeah, it's super clever because it then moves away from being a product that's provided by a corporation to a product that's been created by a creator who poured his heart and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it. So that's super interesting. So before I dive into the next question, just wanted to make sure that the rest of the audience knows. So we'll open it up to Q&A if you guys have any questions. So either raise your hands within Zoom, or just send me a quick message in the chat. And while you're doing that, I'll ask you another question. So this one is around business models and monetization. And so email, I associated in the past primarily with free marketing sequences and something where I would give my email address in return for some, let's say, freebie content. And you and some other online educators opened my eyes that it can actually be a very interesting monetization channel if you're a creator or if you are a media or education company. And so prices range from, let's say, $5 in your case to also like $2.99 also in your case with the other course. So I just wanted to get a little bit more about your thinking, kind of like what are the different models out there? What do you see are the advantages, downsides of either?
I'll start by saying I don't think people value free stuff. Like, I think you can get a lot of value out of free stuff, but price is a signal. And depending on what you want to get out of your course, you know, it's like you said, I have a $5 email-based course and I have a $299 email-based course, and I have happy customers in both of those, right? I haven't had a single complaint. Actually, that's not true. We've put 1,500 people through Big Later. And in that time, one person has asked for a refund because they were in a country that we didn't cover when it got to our like accounts and taxes section. So I think, you know, there's trade-offs. You could probably grow your email list faster with a free product, but you're not going to know who's got intent or, you know, who the more qualified prospects are going to be. We found that open rates were higher when people paid even $5 for the product. And then whether that's like a vanity metric or not, like it's kind of what you got when it comes to email. But at the end of the day, it's like, I think there's a couple of things going on. It's like, how convincing is your landing page, and how compelling is the story that you're telling about the value of this transformation you're promising them? And then you can get really creative with trials as well. Like when we first launched Big Later, which, like I said, it was a 25 email sequence, broken into 4 chapters. We were like, we'll give people the first chapter for free and let them trial the experience. And ultimately we're like, this kind of sucks. It's like it was like a 7-day trial, and they were just getting an email a day, and we couldn't really our conversion rates weren't great off the trial. Now what we do with our B2B product is like you can pack an email-based course trial into 15 minutes, give them a sample of what, the learning experience is going to be like, what the content's going to be like, what you were like as a teacher. If you just approach that trial as more like a, hey, set expectations up front. This is going to be 6 emails in sort of quick succession. There will be a little commentary about like what we're doing, why we're doing it. You'll get a flavor for, the educational experience, and you can make your decision in less than half an hour. And so that's actually like where we're going in the future. So it's like, you can still give them a free taste, but make sure that you've like really dialed it in, and make sure that they're like, okay, I'm going to make a go, no go decision on this within 15 minutes.
And I'm curious, so in this instance, when you have 6 emails in quick succession, would they be triggered by your ESP automatically in the small minute increments instead of like 24-hour delay?
Yeah, exactly.
That's smart. Okay. And also at the beginning, you mentioned that initially you started out with B2C and now you're moving to B2B. So was that intentional from the get-go, or did that develop over time?
Early, we knew, we were like, okay, we're going to do this sort of one-size-fits-all product, and then we're going to verticalize, or we're going to expand the content. Then we're going to verticalize the content and go for like, this is specific to healthcare. This is specific to people who are going into like law school or the gig economy. We ended up skipping that step because the 4th thing was like, we'll go B2B. And so from the beginning, there was like an appetite to sell this in some way, package it up, sell it to businesses, maybe as bulk courses or something else. And we did get some initial interest from a couple companies who were like, hey, how do I get this for like all my employees? Because I understand the connection between financial literacy and retention, and I enjoyed the product myself. And so we were like, well, we can do that. We'll just, give us a CSV. But another piece of this is like a $5 product. Couldn't recommend building a business around a $5 product less. Like do not do that. And I would not do it again. The upside of it was like I said, we put 1,500 people through the course, and we got to make a ton of modifications and improvements to the place where we're like, okay, this is solid. As of like in the next few months, we're actually like totally changing our pricing structure to actually facilitate like a humming consumer business line. But at a point we were like, if we're going to keep doing this sort of altruistic, like $5, anyone can afford this, we have to figure out how to make revenue another way. And so almost as like a forcing mechanism to go explore the B2B channel, which ultimately the market is telling us like there's value there. People don't understand their compensation packages. People aren't getting financial literacy in school. They're not getting it from their employer right now. And the impact can be drastic, and its impact on the bottom line with the cost of like hiring and recruiting and interviewing and backfilling and training and losing tribal knowledge and all that jazz.
Mm-hmm. I mean, another interesting aspect of it is with the B2C route, you were able to collect the data points and say, 1,500 people bought it and went through the sequence with, let's say, open rates higher than 85, 90%, whatever. And with that, you can just go to B2B clients and say, look, we tested it in the market and it works. So it should also work in your instance.
We're definitely figuring out our messaging on that front, but just if a company is going to fall back on like, hey, we're we're going to offer our employees a quarterly lunch and learn with our like ancient 401k rep. It's just not a great experience. So it's like, yeah, you can sort of check the box on financial literacy, or you can go that extra step and be like, I'm actually going to deliver an experience to the employees that resonates with them. It's a tone and it's a voice that they're familiar with from the other newsletters that they kind of read. And it's in a format that they're also deeply familiar with, which is just learning through, information coming to their inbox. So that's kind of where we're saying, look, you can do this stuff, or you can do it really well with us.
Super cool. I haven't received any audience questions yet, so I would like to flip it around and say, I think in the audience we have at least two buckets of writers. So one bucket would be people who have a regular newsletter writing about the different variety of topics, and the other bucket would be people who have written long form content for their personal or corporate blog. So if you would give them a recommendation of getting started with EBCs for either bucket, what would be the first steps they could take?
I guess the first question is like, are you interested in teaching something? Like, is there something that you gathered from your experience that you think, hey, other people benefit from learning this, but not just like learning it through your educational lens. So it's like, you have an idea in your mind of like, well, this is the best way to learn this. This is the structure that, you've got all these components of like, these little nodes of the stuff that is required to understand topic X. But it's like, how do you structure those things? How do you take all the things that you've learned in your own sort of like educational journey, synthesize them into the big things, structure those, and then add, whatever entertainment value you possibly can to enhance the experience. It's like, question one, do you have something that you're like, I think people would benefit from learning this and I want to teach it? And then from there, it's like, yeah, go to emailbasedcourse.com and, buy my book. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm happy to chat with anybody who's on this call or who listens to it afterwards. If this is something that you are interested in, we can pressure test.
For sure. And you raise a very interesting point, because the same topic presented by the wrong messenger, it's not going to hit the note, right? So the voice is actually super, super important. So let me ask you this then. Since your tone is fairly conversational with personal anecdotes and so on, do you see that you have to adapt your writing for the B2B products? That you have to tone it down or take out the certain examples?
We'll see. It's pretty early days in the B2B stuff, and it's like we've closed a couple of deals and we haven't changed really anything. But I would expect a little bit of pushback from like bigger corporate clients. At a certain point, a payments processing company reached out to us. Their CFO or COO, I can't remember at the time, had gone through the course, and he was like, I would love to get this for my team, but it's like, we're mostly a team of like very Orthodox Jews, and there were like some cuss words here or there in the course. And so like at a certain point we were like, we can be just as playful and funny if we take out the cuss words and that kind of corporate proof stuff. And it also is like, okay, at a certain point we're going to want to go to high schools with some version of the curriculum, whether it's video or something else. So I guess my come back to this idea that like an EBC, it will yield other things, like the effort of crafting an EBC, which forces you to really distill, your ideas, figure out how to communicate them conversationally. That can be kind of sort of transposed easily into video. If you wanted to create a video series, it can be turned into like an hour-long chat conversation or presentation that you do in a corporate setting. Like the work that goes into the EBC isn't necessarily like forever contained within that medium. And that's where it's like, oh, okay, I feel great about, going into these conversations with corporates, because it's like, what do you want to do? Like, how would you like to deliver this? And we can work with that because it's like we've crafted a curriculum, we've crafted a voice, and we know how to teach the content. And so it's like, well, we're flexible. Let's find what works best for your employees.
And that's also the beauty of text, right? So you said you can easily transpose the content from an EBC into other types of media. And since you have all your content from, let's say, the 25 or 60 emails in one monster document, you just can hit Command F, search for the particular keyword, and then you're in the section that you can then take out and then repurpose for something else. So
yeah, and it's great for social, it's great for blogs, it's great for newsletter content. Like it can, there's so much repurposing potential once you've written 10,000, 25,000 words for a specific, for a specific topic, purposed, like for the student, not for your own, not for yourself. It's like for them. That translates really nicely.
For sure. So effectively right now, most of your day goes into researching and writing, full stop. How was the transition from, let's say, being an analyst in a corporate setting to becoming a writer, and kind of what is your, how do you see yourself as a writer? It's like, is it difficult? What are your particular rituals in writing and so on? So I'm just curious.
So I like it's this cyclical thing where it's like, if we have to write new content, I'll deep heads down focus on the research and the writing. A lot of the other time is spent on like in selling as well, which is sort of like the first job of like a founder in the first place. So focus on the product, which is new content, focus on selling, focus on internal operations. We're like constantly making tweaks to our website copy. We're doing this massive pricing overhaul. I went from having an incredibly structured calendar at Salesforce to having nothing on my calendar. And so in the beginning, I think it was a little hard to find that groove, but after, having written now about 100,000 words across the combined email-based courses, it's like, I know I write best really early in the morning. And I know that like, also part of the process is just grappling with ideas. So it's like, if I'll have a shitty day where it's like, there's a nut and I just can't crack it, like just for putting in an extra hour of just like wrestling with the problem, just trying, knowing that I'm not going to actually there's not going to be a result, but that I'll go to bed having put the work in, like my subconscious will kind of take care of it. And the next day it's like, okay, the path forward is clear. And John Cleese, who amazing, comedian, Monty Python founder, brilliant speaker, has written all sorts of things on creativity. Like he talks about this process of like solving problems in your subconscious. And so knowing that it's like, okay, today was an amazing day. I got a ton of writing done. I can feel really good about that. The following day, absolute garbage, didn't get through something, but like worked on it. It's like, I know that the next day will be probably much better.
Amen. So besides holding the idea, letting it rest kind of like in the back of your mind and going to sleep, do you have some structured aids? So do you have like a Excel sheet where you add your ideas, like a Notion page where you just collect everything the instant you read it? Or like how does the process from research to synthesis to actually putting it onto the page work for you?
I dedicate a lot of time to outlining, right? Like getting the flow of ideas right in a way that I feel like is going to make, tell whatever story it is that I'm trying to tell, or make whatever point that I'm trying to tell. So usually like I'll do a bit of a sort of a free form research and get to a place where I'm like, what are the 3 key takeaways? I've got this constrained format. It's email. It's like 800 to 1,000 words. If we want to get, sort of push it, maybe, just based on what an email can actually hold from a size limits standpoint. And so it's like, I've got this constraint. I start with like, what are the 3 things, once I feel like I've sort of got a grasp on the subject, it's like 3 key takeaways. And then what is the sort of the idea structure that I'll build into an outline that's going to tell sort of like communicate those three things as effectively as possible. And I'll just sort of work that outline. I'll continuously come back to it. It's like, if I feel like, and Andrew Barry, who's like a big course creator personality on Twitter and elsewhere, he talks a lot about the beginner's mind and the value of being able to put yourself in the shoes of this person who is experiencing this stuff for the first time. And I feel like I have a pretty good ability to be like, if I was reading this for the first time, what other things would I want to know? Or is there an order where I would have liked to have known this before this other thing? And so I'll just wrestle with the outline until I get to a place where I'm like, okay, it's time to write. And then by then it's like, it sort of just flows, right? It's like the heavy lifting is done. Now it's just like, let's put some flair and spice into this. And that's the general process, but it doesn't get more specific than that.
Yeah. And beginner's mind is huge. I also recently heard a podcast with Tim Urban where he talks about something very similar, and his way of spinning it is, if you are surprised by something new that you learn, chances are a lot of other people would be surprised by that piece of information. So why not just write exactly about that?
Huge influence for me personally. It's like, I remember being an intern at Salesforce and 6 years ago, and like reading the 70,000 word piece on Elon Musk, and then just being like, okay, I got to read all this stuff, and just doesn't take himself too seriously, but does a really good job of explaining breaking down complex concepts, and then taking what he has done with like taking a complex thing and making it simple. Then he takes that simple thing and he goes a step further and he makes it this like delightful thing. And that's a big part of our MO at Big Later, is like break down a complicated thing into simple things, and then augment, enhance those simple things into things that are like enjoyable for the reader.
Yeah, such a freak of nature in terms of combination of skill sets.
Yeah, he's a special person.
For sure. Cool. Then I would have one more question, but I would just quickly throw it into the round and see if anyone else has anything they want to ask Will. So if you have them, just unmute yourself and just quickly ask the question.
Hey, Will, this has been so helpful. I've been thinking about doing a course. I've been drafting one up, thinking that I had to do sort of a cohort-based course because that is the thing. And that big thing has stopped me from actually producing more than content that I should, because then, it has to be, there's a live audience, fucking crazy community. So it's got to be perfect, right? So, the part of me that gets in my head is like, all right, I don't know if I'm good enough, if this is good enough, whatever. Anyway, I love your concept and the way you've laid out that it's an entryway in almost, and doesn't have to go to cohort-based course now that I'm thinking about it, through your perspective. One of the things I'm wondering about now is, so you're writing these emails that are basically in chunks of 5 minutes, right? But is that the same layout or framework for your higher priced email course? It's still in 5 minute chunks?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the 5 minute thing, the sort of like the 800 word thing, it's like, okay, that's, you can still deliver a lot of value over the course of 1 cup of coffee. Hi. Yeah, it's good to see your face there.
In Hawaii.
No
so I'm
worries.
like,
yeah. Oh, nice.
I want you to see all the chickens running around.
Love it. Yeah, and that, so the higher priced item, it's still sort of, it's 20 emails. And I mean, Art has gone through it, at this point, like I launched back in July, I haven't marketed much, but about 30 people have gone through it. Art, would you say that the impact is there despite being, 5 minute chunks?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't need to be longer than 5 minutes, right? If you can pack a lot of punch in 800 words, it still gives you enough to work on for the rest of the day and to implement it. And around pricing, because pricing is more important from the consumer perspective. So like, what is the value that you get out of the products? And so the reason why Will priced the Big Later course for $5, he wanted to make financial literacy available to a lot of people. And so a lot of recent student grads who just came out of college, maybe have student debt, suddenly have a lot of unlocking knowledge for the price of a cappuccino. For someone like me who wants to turn my, let's say, expertise into a monetizable business, obviously I'll pay more for a course. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents.
That's super helpful. And my last question is, what ranges do you see in email-based courses of pricing?
I think my course, which is priced at $299, probably right at the top there. It is it's like, that's not cheap, right? And the work that goes into building an email-based course is not insubstantial. Like, as Art knows, it's like you are learning you're learning an email marketing tool in a way that's significantly more in depth than you would have known before. You are you're creating a ton of content. Like you're learning a little bit about Zapier and how to connect digital products and digital payments. Like there's marketing that, like, it's not an insubstantial effort. I think a lot of people would make a mistake by being like, I'm going to go the EBC route, but holy shit, it is so rewarding. And once you have it built, then you just get to focus on the fun stuff. So that's my take on this. And it's like, I've been doing this for 2 years now. And like, we have some seriously big names from the sort of like creator economy, who have gone through the course now, who had existing content, who were able to spin one up pretty quick because they had their perspective and they knew what they wanted to talk about. Like, I don't, the testimonials are on my website, so I feel comfortable saying this now, but like Dickie Bush, it went through the course and was like, immediately was able to put this into context. Like Kahi, Rad Reads, like he went through, like, we've got a lot of folks who are really like, they see the value, but they have the resources to like spin it up quickly. So it's like, you just have to decide, is this, for you, about my course, if that would be worth it, but also for your own price point, it's like, what is the value for the end user? That's the tricky question.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hey, Art, can I jump in?
Yeah, of course, Rajat. Quickly, I also added 2 links to both of Will's courses in the chat. So if anyone wants to check it out, Rajat, give it away. Yeah.
So Will, first of all, thank you for taking the time. Truly a pleasure hearing, sharing all your insights with us here. I will specifically note that, as you said, once you like learn a tool in depth and you put in all this work, you finally arrive at a point where you get to do the fun stuff, where you have an opportunity to introduce essentially personal touch points in your user experience. As someone who is running a monthly newsletter with most of my content sort of prepared in advance, I am truly sort of enjoying that as well. So I wanted to note that. I have less of a question, more of a thought here, and was just curious if you have any thoughts for me here. Is in the course of building an email-based course or stuff like this that you have done with Big Later, where I'm intrigued is that when you think about financial literacy as a topic, at least to me, it is more natural to ask the consumer to open up their wallets, right? Because the value add is very clear, and in some sense very abundant as well, right? Like you're teaching them financial literacy. Like most people would not think twice about opening their wallets then. But what I'm intrigued and curious about is if it's possible to actually build a maybe a modern publication of sorts over a email-based course or over a newsletter. So like the broader question in my head is, as like, all these big media institutions are kind of collapsing, right? Nobody reads newspapers, people expect digital content to be free and all of that. Is there an example, or is there a way that you have seen in your journey where someone has actually built a modern publication on top of email, essentially?
Well, the first place my head goes is to the independent journalists on Substack. Like they're able to monetize, there's a lot of folks out there who are making a ton of money, independent of traditional institutions. I think, so short answer is like, yeah, you do see it.
Gotcha.
It's a Hershey's Kiss shape, distribution, or it's like I don't know, it's probably a normal distribution where it's like a couple of people are making a ton of money, and then a lot of people are kind of floundering in that middle, doing okay. So I don't know if that answers your question. Like I don't think email is never going to go away. It's just like, if you can sort of read the tea leaves on how people's relationship with email is changing, like I've got an email address that I just use for receipts, basically, and purchasing shit online. Most of my work when I was at Salesforce towards the end there, it's like was going to Slack. And so like what I enjoyed about my email was the 4 or 5 newsletters that I'd get, per day or maybe once a week, that I was like, oh, this is my happy time in the, when I'm drinking my coffee in the morning, I'm just going to like go through these. It's going to give me stuff to think about. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I think the opportunity is huge. Like people want to infuse their lives with folks who have great perspectives,
right?
In areas that they're interested in.
Yeah. I love that thought. And I mean, kind of in a way, I should be thankful to Slack to take all that stuff away from email. So now email has become truly personal and enjoyable in some sense.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you there that I've like my relationship with my inbox has changed a bit, and I find more joy in it over the last few years. And I never thought about it that way, but perhaps Slack is to be thanked for there.
I think so. I mean, I think there's a couple of things. There's stuff I love about Slack. There's stuff I hate about it. I don't like that we've moved towards this place where it's like there's an expectation of responsiveness. Like getting smaller and smaller every year. It's like, that's not good. Art, I'm sure, has a great perspective on that, Mr. Remote Work. But yeah, it does free up your email to become something different.
Yeah, and something more personal. But anyways, as I said, there was not necessarily a question there, but I appreciate your time and thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Rashad. Yeah, so we're coming up at the hour, so I would wrap this up. Will, thank you so much for being available and sharing your story, your knowledge with us. Anything else from your ends that you would like to share with the peeps?
I just wrote my wedding vows this morning. And I can confidently say, like, writing email-based courses helped with that process.
Well, you put in the reps.
That's right. That's right.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
That's all I've got to say. Check out, if you care to check out those links, like if you want to grab time, whatever, my email is just will@biglater.com. And I'm always happy to chat with folks about EBCs, personal finance, creator economy stuff, whatever.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Will. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.